Hey, Scanner Group, I'm Ryan Mallory.
I'm Jared Banry.
Jared's off camera today because we're here with Sergeant Kirkpatrick and Officer Wulff from Medford Police Department's Livability Team. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Great
Happy
to be here.
Well, I appreciate you guys coming down. In Scanner Group, and I'm sure the public too, there's like lots of questions, mystique, magic. People aren't quite sure what the Livability Team does, and we had mentioned it, and you guys said Officer Wulff reached out to us saying, hey, we'd like to come talk about what that is.
Yeah.
So we'd love to know more, and I think our members would love to know more, and I think it's good for the public to hear it, so we'll post it publicly. How did the Medford Livability Team start?
So I can speak a little bit to that. So back within the last couple of years, and I won't give specific dates because I don't know them off the top of my head, but in the last couple of years, clearly most of the citizens of Medford can probably attest to this as well, as we started seeing a large increase, visible increase in our homeless population, and then a lot of the issues that come along with that sometimes. And so the city recognized that. The city looked at it and started brainstorming ways to come up with solutions to that problem. And along with this, they came up with what's called the Homeless Action Plan. And part of that Homeless Action Plan is the Livability Team. And there's a lot of different points of this Homeless Action Plan to include housing and how to fund housing and how to work with the other folks in the community that deal with homelessness. But the Livability Team kind of came out of that idea that there needed to be a specific team of police officers to deal with just the kind of the visible livability issues that we were having on the Greenway in the downtown area. So the vagrancy, the defecating in public, urinating in public, drinking in public, the fights and disorderly things, and the mental health issues and the drug use and the trash. And they said that they were going to develop a team of police officers, and that's not necessarily a new concept. I think that the manner in which we go about it is a little bit novel and new. But the concept of taking a group of policemen and putting them towards a specific project or towards a specific end state is as old as time. I mean, drug units and school resource officers and so on and so forth. So taking a group of police officers and putting them towards that. So they funded that and made some measurable objective outcomes on what they wanted to see happen. And namely, those were kind of obviously we're law enforcement, so the enforcement piece of enforcing the law in our parks and our Greenway and so on and so forth in our downtown areas and keeping our business owners downtown happy. So there's the enforcement piece, and then there's an outreach piece to that as well. And what we've really done, and Mike can speak to this a lot more than I can, but we've really tried to divide up how much we're doing of each. So it's not always enforcement, it's not always outreach. Sometimes there's a marrying of the two.
Kind of a healthy mix going on there?
Yeah. So,
right.
It just depends kind of on the day. But we realized really early on when this team started, as we were talking earlier before the show, that first day we met with Sergeant Kirkpatrick, and it was kind of like, okay, we're going to get out there and do it. What are we going to do? And his directive was basically like, go forth and conquer. Like, you're kind of writing the script here.
It's your community.
It is, yeah. So let's find solutions that are creative, because our main compliance tool generally, historically, has been enforcement, right? We use enforcement as the tool to gain compliance. And we realized really quickly that enforcement only is never going to solve this issue. There's a human element to it. There's illness to this. There's addiction involved. We needed to address these in a different fashion. Now, we still use enforcement as a tool in our toolbox, but we do a lot of other very non-traditional things as far as in law enforcement to kind of affect change and impact these folks and have a lasting change. We know due to the logistical problems at our jail, if enforcement is the only avenue we're taking, we're solving a problem for maybe a few hours. But if we have somebody and we can help them get off of drugs, get clean, get them in shelter, give them a chance, you can not only solve a livability issue for the city for a lifetime, you can also change a life in the process and impact people. So,
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, we see, people jump in the scanner group, and they're kind of annoyed about crime because they have to deal with it a lot. And I've been here for almost 30 years, and I've seen it increase over time, and had friends, family, myself burglarized and those kind of things. So they get mad about it, but we also see the compassion, and people want. There's no more popular post. Face it, folks. There's no more popular post that we see than somebody that's an addict that we've chased, followed, you guys have arrested repeatedly, that gets clean and has a job and has a good life and might be back with their kids. Those posts are hella popular. So whatever you guys can do to get somebody, to maybe see the light somehow, that's great work there.
Right, and there's nothing. I mean, we get a great feeling out of that too.
Yeah.
And we work with, and I can get into this in a little bit, but we work with a lot of different community organizations, and one in particular, the majority of their staff, and they are phenomenal people, are all folks that Mike and I have chased around for years.
Oh yeah.
They're all folks that we've known for years, that we thought were career lifelong criminals, and things went well for them, and they took responsibility of their lives, and they fixed things, and now they are part of the solution, and they work for organizations that are doing amazing things for people. So
You know what a long-term addict that's been in and out of jail and prison is, that's recovered? They're strong as hell. There's no little thing that happens in their day that completely breaks them. They really put up a fight in life to get someplace after that.
yeah, there's a lot of resiliency in those folks.
And after the last year and a half, it's amazing to take somebody who's in the throes of addiction. They've been living on the street. They're in this kind of survive mode, we call it, and they're just trying to survive. And then you take them out to the camp or to the shelter or something, and they meet with these individuals. And you'll get sometimes, well, you don't understand. And these people can look them right in the eye and say, I exactly understand.
Yeah.
I've been right where you are, and this is where I am now. And that kind of credibility that you can make with people to take them to people that understand exactly where you are in this moment, can speak to that, and then offer solutions for you through lived experience.
Yeah,
I mean, you can't quantify that. Myself as a police officer, I can say I've seen certain things, I've witnessed certain things, I've handled certain cases, but that's not a lived experience for me. Whereas that's why it's so important to have these community groups that we work with who are incredible, and to have these individuals that can do that. They can sit down and look somebody in the eye and say, I know exactly what you're going through.
That bit of fellowship and friendship and mentoring gives people hope and sets that example to say, no, it's totally possible. I'm standing here in front of you, and I did it. You can too. And I would imagine most people walking around on the street don't have that kind of support.
Correct.
Right. Yeah, so our team is, I'll get back to that just a tad bit, but our team's made up basically of, you have kind of myself, just kind of a figure behind the scenes for the most part, sending out emails and telling Mike to do stuff. But then but the people that are actually doing the real work and the folks that are boots on the ground, you have a corporal in Randy Jewell who manages the day-to-day of the team, and then you have Mike Wulff and Officer Josephson and Officer Pickens, and then we have a community service officer he's non-sworn, but Nate Twiss, who is exceptional. Yeah. So it's nice to have Nate there as well. And then we have an analyst assigned to the team as well. So that basically was what the team is made up of: as a corporal, 3 officers, a CSO, and the analyst. We've also added in the last couple of months, and this is a program we're just kind of starting, but a graffiti eradication team where we've added 2 part-time CSOs that 3 days a week are on the Greenway for their entire shift, doing graffiti documentation, removal. They're actually working graffiti cases. So if you see, for instance, FOB, the words FOB on the Greenway, and it's all over the place, they're taking a case on each one of those, and then they're going to set up game cameras. They're going to do these investigations and try to determine who these folks are, and then turn that over to a police officer in a nice little package so that they can go make an arrest on it and hold folks accountable. So, but that's basically what the team is made up of.
Very nice.
I mean, I can't speak highly enough of the officers I work with, but especially Nate Twiss, our CSO, and our analyst, Emily Greb. they are the unsung heroes of the team. I mean, you're looking at a document right there that was generated by Emily. She's the hardest worker. I challenge you to find a harder worker anywhere that works harder than those two combined. So,
Right.
like they're
You have
literally
to
what makes the wheels turn.
You have to start out in that position or any of these positions with some care about the situation, definitely.
Right.
And that's the thing, is that everybody on this team, and I can say this for Medford Police as a whole, we all care about Medford. We love living here. We love the Rogue Valley. I started as an officer here. I lateraled to a city up in Washington. I was there for a few years, and I came back because I missed home. I missed working here. I missed living here. This is where I wanted to raise my children. And so we have a vested interest to see Medford be what we know it can, right? This place is an amazingly beautiful place. We have like the big city feel with the country. I mean, it's kind of the best of both worlds. So that's a big driving force for us on the team, is we want to bring Medford to its peak potential. And we do that by helping these people get off the street and at least giving them a chance to enjoy the same life that we do.
I moved here to go to college, and literally I did not leave because I was going to go to a larger city for my career, but I wanted to raise my kids in an area that was like home, but still with a large enough population that there's business and you can make a living and people can do pretty well here in the area. And it's just a beautiful place. I drive 5 minutes and I'm up in the woods. I'm fishing. It's gorgeous.
It's a great place to live.
Yes.
When you guys are out and about, we all notice some different hot spots for sure. If I were to go to the corner of Riverside and Barnett down here, within a couple of blocks of that, over behind Friend Meyer and that area, I can go find all the people that you probably work with regularly, and a lot of people that are on failure to appears right now and have warrants and those kind of things. How do you work those different spots with that team?
That's interesting. We do, like Mike talked about, like on day one, it was like, okay, how are we going to form this? I mean, it was brand new, and it really was kind of trial by fire for a little while. And what we found, the third, I talked about those measurable objectives, enforcement, outreach, and connecting people with resources. But that third objective was our neighborhood livability partnership. And so the neighborhood livability partnership was founded under the concept that you would take a problem residence, much like one of the ones we talked about earlier, right? A problem residence. You would take that problem residence and you would present it to a team of people that included a bunch of different outside entities, right? So you had the police department, the city attorney, mental health, addiction services,
building safety,
code enforcement. You have all these folks come together and you present this problem, and then everybody's got these different ideas, and everybody can do different things. So what we really came up to, because we were kind of drinking out of a fire hose there for a little while, right?
Yeah.
So we can talk about the numbers of homeless encampments in town and what they've done over the last year. But what we found is we were drinking from a fire hose, and we had to find a way to really narrow that stream and focus on folks. And so what we came up with was our CHOP, which is our Chronic Homeless Outreach Partnership. And it's modeled much like that Neighborhood Livability Partnership, where once a month, pre-COVID, once a month we'd get together. Now that we can't get together as much, it's difficult to have these meetings. But what we'd do is we'd come up with a list of, say, 10 people. And it's like, okay, these people are generating calls for service. They are the folks that we're dealing with the most from a police department perspective, or municipal court would tell us these are the folks that we need to focus on because they have 45 open cases, and they're folks that we need to work with. And so we'd take 10 people and we'd present those 10 people to the Chronic Homeless Outreach Partnership, which included, Rogue Retreat and Access, mental health, Mercy Flights, medical folks, and treatment providers, and there were there's 40 people in this room, and you present each one. It's like, this is we know these folks. Like they talk to them on a daily basis. They know a lot about them. They've gained their trust for the most part, and have developed at least relationships with them. And so we present these people to the group, and then we start coming up with things, and then we try to hold people responsible to what their end of the bargain is on the treatment side or the mental health side, the addiction recovery side.
That's some community love right there. I just want to stop and say for a second, you think about it, you have somebody living on the street, they may be into different things, but a team of experts from different places all comes together to talk about how to make their lives better.
And I'll talk about the individual, and the way that we thought about it was that if you can do 10 a month, right, if you can take 10 of those people a month and solve the issue that is surrounding their chronic homelessness, or really work hard at it and make a dent in it. Sure. When it comes down to it, Ryan, it's on the individual.
Of course.
Right? It's on the individual when it really comes down to it. But if you can push them in the right direction, it makes that insurmountable hill a little less steep.
Yeah, we always talk about we'll give them their shot, right? We're going to set up the scenario
you have
so
to
that you
want,
have the opportunity.
They have to want
succeed.
different.
Right.
Psychologically, they have to want different. Now, deep down inside, almost everybody living in that situation wants different, but how much they want that, I think is tempered by what you guys are doing, really, because with nobody reaching out to them, they're going to want it less. If they feel a little hope and a little love out of the community in this way, and sometimes that needs to be justice and hard love and things like that, and you can't be accosting people, robbing them, stealing stuff and whatnot. That still has to happen relative to law enforcement, but that, I think, makes a huge difference in how they might have the possibility of getting out of that life.
Yeah, and coming back to your hotspot question, on day one, it was overwhelming. If you drove out of the station and thought, the three of us and our CSO partner, Nate Twiss, have to solve homelessness in Medford, it was daunting, overwhelming. And we literally would have turned in, walked right back in and been like, hey, Sarge, it's an unsolvable mission, sorry. And that would have been it. But that's when we really narrowed it down. So we had said, let's look at Alba Park. And then we realized, looking at Alba Park, that the main problem in Alba Park was a father-son duo. We called them like the boat dock, right? They were the dock, and all the boats would come, saddle up the dock, and they'd get food and fuel or whatever, and they'd leave. And these guys were the nexus. So then that was our first problem, if you will. We took these two guys and we're like, if we can get them housed, give them a shot, get them somewhere safe off the street, then we can branch out from there. So the first month, that's really what we did. And we learned a big part of what we do, especially at the beginning, was barrier removal, right? We deal with red tape all the time, right? You go to the DMV and you have to take your number, or now you have to schedule online appointments and do all this stuff and try to figure it out. Now imagine you're homeless. You have no resources. You have no money. You don't have access to a computer or something to do that, but you need an ID. How are you going to do that? The answer to that question is they're not, but then they need that for housing. So, walking through that case of that father and that son, they were up on the housing list for Section 8, but, for instance, they couldn't fill out the application. They needed a deposit. Then we found out they had a credit judgment against them from a past department. So we ended up going down to a local credit agency and kind of explaining their situation. You had 3 uniformed police officers in there going, how are we going to fix this? And it was just we would step in constantly and remove red tape till finally they got a nice apartment, and they've been there ever since, which had an immediate impact on Alba Park. And then in talking to our leadership, it was like, okay, I think this is the program. I think if we can take individuals, and we pick off the ones that generate the most calls for service, that are causing the main issues. If I listed the names off to you, you would know every single one of them. And we try to give them their shot. So what's their main barrier? Is it substance addiction of some kind? Is it a mental illness? Is it just a financial issue or bad decision making? Where are we at? And then we start addressing those problems and removing barriers.
I would bet 50% of the time it's all of those.
Right.
It
Usually
can be
Every
some,
single
yeah.
one of them.
Yeah.
But we notice one usually comes to the forefront.
Correct.
Right. They probably have a little bit of all three, but there's one overarching issue that is really holding them back. Like, they have to drink alcohol. So that is the crux. Like, you can't move forward with, like, being financially responsible and paying your bills and doing that until you deal with the addiction and then go from there. But yeah.
I think we take it for granted that, like Addison, you lost your wallet and had to go get a driver's license. The process for you is to jump into the car and go down to the DMV when it's open. You got to do it online.
Yeah.
But just that you can do it online.
Yeah, I mean, not even right now.
You don't have that. You don't have that capacity for doing it online if you're living on the Greenway usually, or jumping in a car, driving down there with whatever the fee is, getting your picture taken and taking care of everything that same day. Just even transportation to get around to things like a Social Security office. I noticed from trying to help a few people that were addicted, and now they're doing pretty good, most of them, that all of those details have stacked so deep on them, they're not sure which ones to grab onto first to even make any progress.
Yeah, I mean,
sometimes they go to these places or to these organizations for assistance, and they get no, you need to go there.
Yeah.
And so then they're okay, and then they go there and they say, well, no, you need to go there. And then by the third trip, and it's interesting, as police officers, we experience this.
Yeah.
Like we walked in, we're like, hey, we're here for so-and-so. They're like, nope, you need to go over there. And we're like, what are you talking about? We just called you. And then you go over there and like, nope, you need to go there. And they're like, we just left there. What are you talking? Yeah. So we've worked through these processes too, and over the last year and a half, streamlined it for a lot of these folks. And now we have the camp, we have the shelter, we have so many more resources now for people that didn't exist a year and a half ago. So honestly, our jobs have become far easier in the sense because we just have like these resources right at our fingertips now.
Right.
It does seem like there are some good resources and a lot of good organizations here. And I always thought that was the problem. Like, things don't get matched up well. I know there's beds at the Mission and beds here, and now there's the camping spot and
right.
that kind of stuff. And I know Justine Hon, who works with that, and it sounds like it's really successful and doing a good job. And I don't ever hear any calls to there, so it must be going.
And there
well.
aren't. There was a lot of outcry, public outcry about putting the camp where they put. I mean, if you put a homeless camp anywhere, anybody who's nearby or business nearby is probably going to be reserved about that. But there was a lot of outcry from folks like, oh, it's going to bring all this crime. It hasn't. It's actually done the exact opposite. There's been probably less calls for service at that property because that property used to be an illegal encampment all over the place.
Yeah.
And now there's less calls for service. That's
100%
Justin and his boys, huge shout out to that.
Can't speak highly enough about Justin. He
do a great job.
Yeah, Justin and Chris and the whole crew there are just amazing folks.
Can't honestly speak high enough about Rogue Retreat and the work they do. They've been our success is tied directly to them.
Correct.
And the work they do. It's just you can't even quantify what they do for our community. And so if you're unsure of what they do or how they do it, do some research, get a hold of them, talk to them, because they are literally doing amazing work every day.
Yeah, if you want to donate money to somebody, donate it to Rogue Retreat.
Exactly.
And that just comes from our perspective of seeing. And there's a lot of great organizations out there. I'm not saying that anything else, but from what we see in dealing with the homeless issue and dealing with trying to address homelessness, there are organizations certainly that rise to the top.
Yeah.
Right.
In the way that they do it, the way they're organized, the way they're led, and the folks that they have working for them.
And Rogue
Retreat is
Retreat's
most
kind of
definitely one of
two
those.
parts. You have Rogue Retreat that does the housing, the program side, and then you have Set Free, which does those kind of tangible, immediate needs,
Right.
Food, clothing, showers, laundry.
Yeah, they have showers and
without
laundry right
them,
there.
too. And then honestly, we've really forged a relationship lately with Compassion Highway 2 and Melissa there. She's really kind of revamping her whole program, and we've been talking with her a lot and really excited to see what she's going to be doing here in the future. She's going in a great direction, and so we're excited to work with her too. So just a shout out to those that we work with every day.
I heard she has a new board and new visions.
Yeah. From what I heard, and you guys should have her on and let her talk, and the Rogue Retreat people as well, I'm sure at some point in the future. But it's definitely she's going more towards that solution. Like, what is your issue? Are you addicted to methamphetamine? Okay, how can I help you? How can I get you into treatment? How can I? So moving away from more the you need stuff right now. Now it's going to be, what's the overarching problem-solving, life-changing need here, not what's the immediate need you think you need right now.
There's a lot of love behind a meal, but there's a ton of love behind a way out.
Agreed.
Right. Yeah. And that's one of the things that we love these organizations that are a hand up, not a hand out.
Yeah.
Yes.
It seems to be much more effective
Yeah.
in the long term.
For those that want it, definitely.
Right. Yes.
I think you guys are always going to have a criminal. This isn't going to go away. There is no curing homelessness.
Right.
There's always going to be a criminal element in Medford and everywhere else. But our citizens get scared when they see things like Seattle's burning and these videos.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There's one about San Francisco, one about San Diego. We've all seen them, and we think that's coming to us. This, in my opinion, is our city and our law enforcement taking that to the next step before it gets there, so that we can pan it out before that's that big of a problem.
And at the end of the day, we're still police officers too.
Yeah.
And we found a lot of times in getting to know so many social workers over the last year and a half, they'll tell you the most frustrating part of their job is they don't have a lot of traction, right? They can open the door all day, but they can never put their hand in somebody's back and help guide them through that door, right? They can only hold the door open. Where as a police officer, we have a unique opportunity, and I could list off to you 10 people right now that when we first started contacting them, they were belligerent, hostile, just full-on criminal behavior all the time, and we offered them a chance to change, and we're told no. So then we told them, okay, that's your decision. However, I'm a police officer, so from now on, you're going to get arrested a lot for doing this because you can't act this way. And it's interesting after a couple of weeks of that, because again, I'm not a patrol officer on the street handling calls for service. I'm a livability team officer. I have kind of unlimited time if I want to. So if I want to dedicate it to an individual, I can do that. And it's interesting, after a couple of weeks, all of a sudden we see a change of, I don't want that anymore. Like, I'm not a fan of this. And then we say, and then we're right there, kind of like we were talking about earlier, like your big brother. Okay, so can we help you now? Can we do this? Can we talk about rehab? Can we talk about going to the campground? Can we talk about going to the shelter? Can we talk about drug treatment? And I think of one male in particular, it happened a couple of times where we got him into treatment and he relapsed and he went to jail some more, and he's probably 5 months clean now, living in sober living. Like, I just saw him the other day. He came riding up to us in the park on this really cool Schwinn, like gas-powered bike. Super proud of it. He's working, like, completely changed. But it's because of that unique thing we have where I can say, okay, we're going to help you out. And if, honestly, they slap the hand away, then we can come back later when you're committing crimes and we can deal with it in an enforcement capacity and still encourage you. And then it ends up influencing behavior as well. So it's very unique. We've joked sometimes that it's armed social work or social work with handcuffs sometimes, and it's been effective in a lot of situations.
Right.
So,
That's excellent. Jared, you had some questions you wanted to ask these guys?
They've actually answered all my questions.
Yeah.
So I'm just sitting back, kind of like a fan here, watching and learning.
Right.
How can citizens help, like the livability team and also the people that you're working with? I can probably be a lot nicer when I'm calling people out about their addictions and their thefts online. That might help a little bit. But how could the public help you guys do this job better? Because I see the goal, and man, I want you guys to get there, and I want it for the community. So us knowing how we can help better.
I mean, I guess there's a few different ways that the public can help. A is I'm not sure how to phrase this, but empathy, right? So there's a lot of empathy. Each one of these livability officers, that's probably their defining characteristic and what makes them successful in what they do with our homeless population is the fact that they have empathy.
Yeah.
We got to have empathy for folks. At the same time, you don't have to put up with stuff just in the name of empathy. But listening to stuff like this, educating yourself on what the actual problem is so that you have and what the solutions are being done, because we get a lot of folks. I tend to be the clearinghouse for citizen complaints for various reasons, but a lot of the, why aren't you doing anything on the Greenway? Well, that is a complex issue. Why are you not doing something about homelessness? It's a very, very complex issue, and it's something that, that's what I do for the majority of my week, is just work through those issues and try to come up with ways that we can fix this, and it's not easy. And so educate yourself, reach out to us if you have questions. We work for you, right? We work for the community. That's what we do. And we're dedicated to it. So that would be my first one, is really educate yourself, have some empathy to the situation. And then there will be times, and we right before it was scheduled for, I think, September 10th, we were going to do a large volunteer cleanup where we educated the public, brought them down, did this giant cleanup event. We had picked a certain area that we were going to do.
Like a Take Back the Greenway.
And it was kind of a Take
event.
Back the Greenway type thing. And we were going to continue to hold those, but we ended up, the valley burned down 2 days prior, and we had to cancel that. And
we got the Rona.
Right, and you got the Rona kicking in.
But then we had the Hawthorne Park issue kick up right after
Right,
that.
at the same time as the fires, the Hawthorne Park issue kicked off.
That well handled, by the way, handled,
Thank you.
and not with an iron fist, with care, but it also got done so that the citizens have their park back.
Yeah, shout out to the officers who had a lot of restraint and professionalism in the way they handled that. But the big shout out to the city management and the chief of police for their leadership and thinking through that problem and coming up with a solution.
And that's what
you
we
wouldn't
say.
have seen that in a lot of places.
Right.
Pretty impressive.
And for those citizens in the Valley and in Medford that are worried, like, will we ever become a Seattle, a Portland, a San Francisco? Hopefully, when they saw what happened at Hawthorne Park, how we dealt with it, the professional way we handled it, and the compassionate way too, honestly. I mean, yes, there were arrests made and everything else, but let's not get it lost. In that situation, 36 people left that park into shelter and were given their shot. So with that, if you ever worry or get fearful, understand that we as a police department, your city leadership understands, and that's our response to that kind of issue. So, and kind of piggybacking off what the sergeant said about what citizens can do with the empathy and some of the education is, please be gracious and patient with us. We are working through the problem. Again, we love this city. We are here to serve you. We want to make Medford great, and we're working hard at that every day. And honestly, we have amazing community support. I challenge any other department to say that they're more supported than us here. And we enjoy that too. Honestly, if there's anything you can do, there's nothing better than when you're out on a call when somebody drives by and gives you a thumbs up or a thank you, or, we appreciate what you do. You can't quantify what that means to us and the impact it has on our day and on our outlook. And you don't know, that officer could be having a hard day, hard shift, a lot of hard calls, and just your simple act of saying thank you. We see you, we appreciate you. That means more than you can know. And we do get that a lot, so.
I'm glad.
I think a lot of people misunderstand how much red tape you guys are going through to do everything that you're doing. I think you guys are doing a great job, and I think that you would love to instantly solve the problem if you could, but you can't because of red tape and because it's such a big issue. So I just want to say thank you guys right now.
Appreciate it.
Kind of
Thanks.
notify people that there's a lot more than
I hate going through all of those details in my own life. I couldn't imagine doing it for somebody else every day.
I can detail what those issues are that we currently deal with, and this is part of that when I was
you can
talking
talk
about
just about the Greenway,
right?
And just say that
the education piece for the public. When the public looks, why have the police department not removed that tent? It's so visible. I get on the freeway. I'm driving down the freeway. I'm driving through Bear Creek Park, and I'm looking over, and there are these giant encampment. Why is it there, and why have they not removed them? So I'll give a little bit of a backstory to this. When we started this team, we wanted to have some sort of measurable data that we could work on to say, how are we doing, right? And we already have through our continuum of care and through as a mandate, there's what's called a point in time count that's done by the Jackson County Homeless Task Force and the continuum of care, and they do this point in time count once a year. In order for them to get money, they have to do these counts. It's one of the things they have to do, and they go out and they do a homeless count, and so they count individuals. We didn't want to gather individual data. For various reasons, law enforcement gathering individual data, there has to be reasons for it, so on and so forth. But what we did is we decided, let's go out and count camps. And the way we did that, we developed an app on our phones. You take your iPhone and you stand in the middle of a camp, you GPS mark it, you put some information about it. Very simple information. Is it a small, medium, or large camp? Which, 1 to 2 people is small, and 3 to 4 is a medium camp, and a large camp is kind of 5 or 6 plus. Are there hazards? Are there fire pits? Are there dogs? Are there biohazards? Are there, what are some of the issues? But we're not documenting people.
Sure.
Right? We're just simply plotting those camps. And so back in September of 2019 was our first one.
Yep.
And in September of 2019, we had 145 active camps. And this is in the city, the entire city.
This is not just the Greenway.
Not just
This
the
is
Greenway, but
anywhere you think you've seen a camp there.
90% of our camps are on the Greenway.
Right.
So there were 145 active camps that we spent 4 or 5 days with 6 people walking around and GPS marking all of these camps, and counting them and putting them into a GIS system. So there's 145 active, 102 inactive, and then in March of these guys started doing their thing, and the CHOP developed, and the outreach happened, and we had our school resource officers on bikes down there, and so on and so forth.
We're
And
doing
really
outreach on the Greenway with addictions recovery services, you name it. Just
right. The health and safety
press.
the health and safety operations were going, which is another misnomer. The livability team doesn't do these health and safety operations. Well, we're kind of involved a little bit, and we do the outreach part of that, but the going around and cleaning up the camps is typically not this team.
Yeah, I figured.
That's a different entity. But we get lumped in the same, and that's fine because we're all cops, and we all look the same.
Well, no, you're skinnier than me, so
you're robust.
yeah. That's one way to put it. Yeah.
And so then in March of 2020, so 6 months later after that September count, we were at 97, down from 145 down to 97 active camps. Now, you can look at the fact that, okay, that's over the winter time, you're in environmental impacts, so on and so forth, but I think that was significant. And then COVID hit. So March of 2020, COVID hit, and what happened is that the directive was the homeless population is going to shelter in place for COVID. So that decision was made. We went through and notified the entire Greenway countywide. Access started delivering lunches once a day, and the homeless population was told to shelter in place. And then it got a little out of control down there, because folks just didn't shelter in place. More people came,
And then
because you
then
were
you
not
had
doing-
a significant event in September of the Almeda fire, where basically every other section of the Greenway in the county now is burned out.
Yep.
So Medford has the only intact, if you will, vegetated section
Yes.
of the Greenway, which resulted in what Sarge will tell you now.
Right. So then we couldn't do our September count because we were all out rolling in the cinders, and so we ended up doing it in November, early November of 2020, and we were at 166 camps. So we're up 71%. Wow. From our 97 in March to 166 active as of last month. What did go down was our inactive camp. So you have an active camp that's actively being lived in, and then you have an inactive camp that used to be an old camp, or it's just kind of a trash pile that was a camp at one point. Those have all gone down, and this is a huge shout out to our partners at the Medford Parks Department, Matt and his crew, who are the Parks Livability Team. They another I can't praise them enough.
The work those guys do every day is
Just incredible.
humbling.
So, anyhow, that's kind of where we're at numbers wise. So when you have COVID hit, you have people saying shelter in place, and then you have 2 large cases that come out. So policemen work primarily. You have the law, right? So you have a particular law, say prohibited camping. You can't camp in a public area, in a tent, so on and so forth. That's a law. Then you have what's called case law, and case law really dictates how that law is applied. And so there's 2 significant case laws that came down. One was a Boise decision out of Boise that was a Ninth Circuit Court decision that said that certain things have to occur for you to be able to enforce prohibited camping. Some of those things, and I'll probably screw this up, but you have to have enough shelter beds. Like you have to have open shelter beds. You have to do specific notifications. And there are a lot of restrictions on what you could do. But they didn't really define like shelter beds.
Right.
They didn't define how many shelter beds you had to have. You just had to have open ones. And then just after that, a little while after that, and basically what what our response was, what happened with that city code, because prohibited camping used to be a crime. Well,
And that was the crux of the Boise case, was you can't arrest people for camping.
so we made it a violation.
Right.
But then if you fail to comply with the lawful order to a violation, that it does become a crime. Not that statute itself, but other statutes apply. So we kind of that's how we worked around the Boise case. Well, then we had a ruling out of Grants Pass. And the Grants Pass case kind of expanded a little bit on that Boise decision. And so right now we're in this real holding pattern of trying to determine what we can legally do per the courts when it comes to these homeless encampments. And can we use our current prohibited camping statute? Is it legal? And so that's the issue now. And so our deputy city attorney's working his tail off trying to figure that out, and he's going to League of Oregon City meetings, and they're trying to figure out that issue, because that is an issue. You have to have an enforcement piece to that.
That's the biggest frustration that I see from the public is they're seriously concerned about the fires on the Greenway and that kind of stuff.
And we are too.
And a
And you
little
should be,
shell
as
shock
you should
now.
be.
And I saw a number down here, 52 fire pits.
Well, we had over 100 fires this year.
Yeah,
Over 100
I
fires.
And
imagine.
that's anything from a warming fire to a full-blown flare up,
bonfire.
And those are
Yeah.
only calls for service. We had many more fires than
Sure.
that. We had 99 to 102 or something calls for service from the first of the year through October, September, and the majority of those were on our Greenway.
I see the public's point, or when people are talking about this, and that those camping laws were originally in any city. They were placed there because things burned down when people were camping in
That
town.
and cleanliness, right?
Yeah,
So
right.
You look at the environmental impact. If people want to get upset, look at the environmental impact and what's happening to Bear Creek if you walk down
Nasty.
and see what's happening there. That upsets me more than
take
anything
a
else.
peek under the Larson Creek Bridge if you're on the Greenway, and just take a look at what happens under there. You know, we all care about our environment, and again, it's uncommon for a geographical area like us to have a paved path along a waterway. And
It's vegetated.
We want to make it the crown jewel of the valley. We would love for it to. I mean, I was just down there a couple weeks ago watching giant Chinook swim up Bear Creek at the 9th Street footbridge. Like, this is something that should be enjoyed. And again, we share the citizens' frustration, but at the same time, like the sergeant said, we have to work within the confines of the law.
Definitely.
Until the courts give us clarification, because a big part of that, it was Blake versus the city of Grants Pass, and a big part of that case was you can't enforce prohibited camping unless you have services available. So if you're going to tell them they can't camp, there has to be an alternative, right? But then they don't really define at all what that means. So like Sergeant said, like, how many is that? 100 shelter beds? Is it based on your population? What does that mean? And when our attorneys have asked that question, you kind of get we're figuring it out. So until they can define for us what that looks like, but trust me, we're waiting. We're waiting there. When the decision comes and we get the directive, we're going to be right back out on the Greenway again, cleaning it up, trying to make it what we know it can be. And there's a lot of stuff in the works, but we're right there with you. This is our life every day.
Right.
This is our world we live in. We want to see the Greenway clean, and that's going to be a goal. But again, we have
Pretty
to
glad
work
you guys
in
are
the
out there working
confines
on
of the
it.
law.
And when you're working with public areas, you're working with parks. The laws and the standards apply to everybody, right? So we work for the citizens of Medford. We work for the homeless community.
Yeah.
Every living human
That's right.
being that is a resident here in the county, whether you have a roof over your head or not, we are your public servants. So when the folks get mad that there's a lot of transients in the park, well, they have the human right to be in that park as long as they're complying with the rules of being in that park.
Yeah.
And that's really one of the things that we try to focus on is
In the
those
park,
rules.
in the park, the concerns I usually see are more relative to pedophiles, sex offenders, and I notice when there's a green sweep, there's usually 1 to 2 of those picked up each time there's a green sweep.
Right.
So those are the those are the concerns I see people going, oh, there's transients in the park. I don't think they mean all transients. I think they mean the guys that are looking at the kids.
Yeah, and that's not a super common thing,
Right.
that we have people actually looking at stranger kids in the park. I worked sex crimes for a number of years as a detective, and it's the stranger on stranger
It's unusual.
is a very unusual
usually
thing to
know
happen.
each other somehow.
It's very unusual.
And we are well aware who lives on the path and who lives near where and what their background is. So
Yeah.
the livability team officers, we know who those individuals are. And if we see any kind of behavior that's outside the norm, we address it immediately. So
Yeah, I wanted to get out of the way and let you guys meet Sergeant Kirkpatrick and Officer Wulff in person. With the COVID thing, we're all trying to be respectful. So now me and my staff, Jared, my son, are back far enough, and these guys work together all the time that you can meet them in person. And I might just ask you guys, like each of your own individual favorite, don't have to tell the whole story, but just a little favorite snippet of an experience with the livability team that you've had.
oh gosh, that's
On the spot.
that is challenging because I mean there's a lot of entertaining scenarios that we've dealt with. I mean, really on the spot here.
Yeah, I'm sure that you have some stories. I'll start. I kind of my proudest thing really has been watching. So I've been a cop here for 18 years, and I've done a variety of different things. And this has been the most rewarding part of my career. And watching the livability officers and the manner in which they conduct themselves and the amount of care and heart and empathy that they put into their job I mean, these are all still cops, right? They're still a personality, awesome people, and they will arrest the world if needed. However, I was trying to use good language. I told you I wasn't going to curse.
It's okay.
But the way that they have switched that role when needed, their ability to put on a different mask at different times and really play those different roles and have that empathy, it's just been really proud for me to watch that shift.
Yeah.
And it's been a really cool thing. I'm just super proud of that whole team and what they do on a daily basis. And so my hat's off to them. That's kind of my highlight.
That's excellent
for the livability team.
Thanks, Sarge. And, plug here, you can't be successful without good leadership. I think we all know that.
Very important.
Yes. I mean, we can't function unless we're supported and unless our sergeant's being our advocate. And am I getting it on?
Yeah, a little
okay.
brown.
All right. Sorry. Just remember this during my eval, right?
Yeah, that's already done, by the way.
Oh, no.
I'm taking that one back.
But in all seriousness, again, we started a unit from ground up here. And a sergeant that trusts us, and Corporal Randy Jewell, too, he deserves credit as well because he's with us every day as well. Trusts us enough to know, here's what I would like to see kind of happen, but we trust you, go out and do it, and I have your back. And he has every step of the way. We call, hey, we've asked for some weird pieces of gear. Like, it's not often that you take and you go down and buy coffee cards because, well, why do you need coffee cards? Well, it's really easy to develop a relationship with
Icebreaker.
somebody.
Can you
Right,
go,
like, hey,
can
do
you
you
go
like
buy
that?
me socks?
Right. Yeah.
I'll go
can
buy you
buy
socks,
a
Mike.
box of wool socks.
Yeah.
You hand out a socks, a hand warmer, and a coffee card, and somebody who wouldn't normally talk to you is now talking to you. So stuff like that. So that's my piece. We couldn't do that without our leadership and our sergeant advocating for us daily and supporting all of our crazy ideas. When we tell them, hey, we're going to take this van and we're going to go move this couch and we're going to take this couch over to this apartment. He's like, you're going to do what? And we're like, trust us, it's going to be awesome. And he does, and he did. And
Somebody slept on that couch, didn't
Right.
they?
Oh, yeah.
yeah, oh, yeah.
See?
Yeah.
It was one of our officers' couch. It was one of the officers on the livability team donated his couch to these folks in their apartment.
Yeah. See, there's a lot of love there.
There's a lot of cool stuff that goes on there. But
I think, you have funny interactions with people every day, but I think the moment where we could kind of see the impact of the team is there was a city council meeting where there was a group that came that are not the police department's biggest fan. And Rogue Retreat brought down a whole group of people that have worked directly with us
Yeah.
and who, through our efforts and their efforts, were successful. And to sit there and listen to those stories.
To hear that work you
Right.
do impacted them, right?
And then to piggyback off that, you mentioned Justine Hon. I'm going to mention him again. Justine Hon, if you didn't catch that, he's amazing. During the Hawthorne Park incident, again, this is a man who for years we were having interactions with in strictly police arrest.
Enforcement, enforcement capacity.
He gave me his testimony since he
Right.
was a very young child.
Yes. And we've all had, we've been cops for a long time. We had these interactions with him. And we're down in Hawthorne Park, and there was an individual who was taking a role that was strictly trying to elicit a response from an officer that could be recorded and posted. So the things that were being said were very disrespectful, very belligerent, flagrant, all that. And Justin stood there, and it was after several minutes of this, Justin just rushes to our defense and is, you don't know them, you're saying these things. And this individual's like, well, you can't talk to me that way. He's like, I'm not a police officer. I'll talk to you however I want. But you don't understand the work. I know these men's heart. This is what they do. They care. And to have somebody like that speak that way, that truth about you right in front of you, it stays with you. I mean, those are the moments that really stick with it. Here was this man who for years was, he considered us an enemy.
Yeah.
And now here he is standing in the park advocating on my behalf.
Yeah, going toe to toe with the.
It's amazing, and I can't stress enough. You guys should have him on.
Yeah.
And
for sure.
and talk to him. Yeah.
Had a lot of conversations with Justin. That guy has an incredible heart for people.
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
Yeah, another story from that incident was it wasn't just Justin. Probably my favorite story from that Hawthorne Park incident where we had closed the park so that it could be cleaned. Was as we were doing so, and folks were in our face with cameras and yelling at us and screaming at us and calling us unmentionable things. One of the unsheltered homeless gals that had been residing in the park ran up to our defense and started screaming back at the homeless advocates as well, like, leave them alone. These are good people. They have no idea what they've done for us. Yeah. And that was huge too. And this is someone that we.
One of the reasons I wanted to get out of the picture so we could take masks off is with all those things that go on, people don't realize. I mean, I might bump into one of you guys at the grocery store, or you might coach a kid's team,
and we do both.
You guys are neighbors and citizens, and I think you deserve more respect than what's gone on in recent months. But I think the livability team really proves where most cops' hearts are, and we want to know our beat cops. Like when I grew up and I knew the cops in my neighborhood. That's a good thing. People trust the cops in their neighborhood as they get to know them, and it really helps. It helps solve crimes, definitely, but it helps in something like this,
and
big time.
If you see us and we're working or not working, stop and say hi. We'd love to chat with you.
We may be a little, if we're not working, we may be a little like,
how do you know me? And then once you say like, hey, I saw you on the podcast. Oh, okay.
You get a little skeptical of
you arrested me 3 weeks ago.
I would
Right.
imagine, right? Yeah.
But yeah, it's our role as policemen to take abuse sometimes. That's okay with us.
Yeah.
We do this job voluntarily. No one's holding a gun to our head to come to work every day and do this. So we volunteer to do it, and we're happy to, and we don't mind the abuse. But it does over the past year has been a little harder to not want to get jaded with society.
Sure.
So if you see the reservation in us sometimes, that's usually what it is. And I think that our department and our officers do a really good job of being resilient with that. But there will be some standoffish, a little bit of, there's some bad days.
Sure.
So.
Everybody has bad days.
And honestly, I have to say, on days off, you can watch the news and you can fall into, like I call it, a YouTube hole.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, and you've consumed this media with this narrative. And I gotta tell you, I'll put this uniform on, I'll jump in my car, I'll head out on the streets of Medford, and the citizens of Medford, they don't let me down.
Nope.
They always make me feel supported. Over the last year, I've been a cop 14 years. Sarge's been a cop longer. I have never been stopped more at intersections, eating lunch, walking, and just thanked than I have in the last year. And that's a testament to the citizens of this city and this valley.
Yeah, for sure.
That is why we will never turn into a Seattle.
You're exactly
Definitely.
right.
That's exactly.
You're
right.
exactly
This
right.
is a warm, friendly place.
And again, like coming back to the Hawthorne Park incident, we were there cleaning out that camp. I can't tell you how many people drove by honking, waving, cheering, yelling, great job, people pulling in and giving coffee cards to us and thank you notes and things like that. Like, so just keep it up, Medford. We appreciate it. We love it, and it does not go unnoticed.
Yeah, we work for you.
Yep.
I appreciate you guys coming on the show. We'll get this produced and out so everybody can learn more about the Livability Team. Thanks a lot.
Thank you
for having us,
having
guys.
And thank you for watching.
Thanks for tuning in to the Scanner Group Crowdsourced Crime and Safety Podcast with Ryan Mallory and Jared Banry from ThiefHunter Labs. Make sure to subscribe today for notifications about the next show. Visit us at www.thiefhunterlabs.com or on Facebook as Thief Hunter Labs in the search bar.